If you're trying to become a parent through surrogacy right now, there's a country you probably haven't heard about that's completely changing the game. And no, I'm not talking about the US state. I'm talking about the country in Eastern Europe that's becoming the #1 destination for thousands of parents this year. Georgia, the small country between Europe and Asia that most people can't even point to on a map. But in the surrogacy world, it's basically the best-kept secret that's not really a secret anymore. So why are intended parents packing up and moving their entire surrogacy journey to this place? Why are couples from over 60 countries choosing Georgia over places like the United States, Ukraine, or other traditional surrogacy destinations? And more importantly, should you be considering it too? I'm going to break down everything you need to know about surrogacy in Georgia. The real costs, the actual legal situation, what the process looks like from start to finish, and the parts that nobody talks about until you're already knee-deep in the process. Because here's the thing. Surrogacy is one of the most expensive, emotionally draining, and legally complicated ways to have a child. And if you mess up the location part, you could lose hundreds of thousands of dollars, face legal nightmares, or worse, not be recognized as the legal parent of your own biological child. So let's get into it. First, let me give you some context about why location matters so much in surrogacy. Because unlike adopting a child or having a baby naturally, surrogacy involves a massive web of legal systems, medical systems, and international laws that change depending on where you are. In the United States, surrogacy is legal in some states and completely banned in others. In places like New York, it was illegal until just a few years ago. In Michigan and Louisiana, it's still illegal today. Even in states where it's legal, the laws are all over the place. Some states automatically put the intended parents on the birth certificate. Others make you go through a complex legal process after the baby is born just to prove you're the parent. And the cost? In the United States, surrogacy can easily run you anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000. Sometimes more. That includes agency fees, surrogate compensation, medical costs, legal fees, and about 1 million other things that add up faster than you think. Then you have places like Ukraine, which used to be one of the top surrogacy destinations in the world. Affordable, legal, and straightforward. But then the war started in 2022, and everything changed. Thousands of intended parents were stuck in limbo. Babies were born in bomb shelters. Parents couldn't get to their children. It was an absolute disaster. Canada is another option, but here's the catch. In Canada, you can't pay a surrogate beyond covering her expenses. That's it. No compensation for her time, her risk, or what she's going through. So finding a surrogate in Canada is incredibly difficult because not many women are willing to go through pregnancy and childbirth for free. India and Thailand used to be huge surrogacy hubs. Cheap, accessible, and relatively easy to navigate. But both countries shut down commercial surrogacy for foreigners after a bunch of scandals and legal issues. Now, unless you're a citizen, you're out of luck. So what's left? This is where Georgia comes in. And I'm not just talking about some random alternative. Georgia has quietly built one of the most surrogacy-friendly legal systems in the entire world. And it's not just friendly. It's designed specifically to protect intended parents in ways that most other countries don't. Let me explain. In Georgia, surrogacy has been fully legal since 1997. That's almost 30 years of established law. It's not some new experimental thing. It's embedded in their civil code, and the laws are crystal clear. When a child is born through surrogacy in Georgia, the intended parents are automatically recognized as the legal parents from the moment of birth. Not after a court case, not after months of paperwork. From day one, the surrogate has zero parental rights to the child. Zero. She can't change her mind. She can't claim custody. It's written into the law. The birth certificate lists the intended parents as the mother and father, or in the case of single parents or same-sex couples, as the legal parent or parents. There's no mention of a surrogate, no adoption process, no legal gray area. Compare that to places like the United States, where even in surrogacy-friendly states, you often need to go through a legal process called a pre-birth order or a post-birth order to establish parental rights. In some states, you literally have to adopt your own biological child. In Georgia, none of that exists. The law is on your side from the start. But here's where it gets even better. Georgia doesn't just have good laws for surrogacy. It has good laws for international surrogacy, meaning the Georgian government is fully aware that most of their surrogacy clients are foreigners, and they've built the system to accommodate that. When your baby is born in Georgia, you get a Georgian birth certificate with your name on it. Then, you take that birth certificate to your embassy, and they issue you a passport for your child, so you can go home. For most countries, this process is smooth because Georgia's surrogacy laws are respected internationally. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect for everyone. Some countries, like Germany and Sweden, don't recognize surrogacy at all. So if you're from one of those places, you'll still face challenges when you try to bring your baby home. But for the majority of countries, including the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and most of Europe, the process works. All right, so the legal side is solid. But what about the cost? Because let's be honest, that's probably the biggest factor for most people. In Georgia, the total cost of surrogacy typically ranges from $50,000 to $70,000. Let me say that again. $50,000 to $70,000 for the entire process. That includes the surrogate's compensation, all medical procedures, IVF, embryo transfer, prenatal care, delivery, legal fees, and agency coordination. Compare that to the United States, where you're looking at $150,000 to $200,000 minimum. That's a difference of $100,000 or more. For a lot of people, that difference is the difference between being able to afford surrogacy or not. And before you start thinking that cheaper means lower quality, let me stop you right there. The medical facilities in Georgia are modern, well-equipped, and staffed by doctors who are trained internationally. Many of the doctors working in Georgian fertility clinics have trained in Europe or the United States. The clinics use the same technology, the same procedures, and the same standards you'd find in any top-tier fertility clinic in the Western world. The reason it's cheaper isn't because the quality is worse. It's because the cost of living in Georgia is lower. Surrogate compensation, medical staff salaries, and operational costs are all significantly cheaper than in the United States or Western Europe. But the actual medical care? It's comparable. So who exactly is going to Georgia for surrogacy? The answer is pretty much everyone. Heterosexual couples, same-sex couples, single men, single women, people from Europe, Asia, North America, South America, Australia, the Middle East. You name it. One of the reasons Georgia has become so popular is because it's one of the few countries in the world that allows surrogacy for single parents and same-sex couples. In most countries, you need to be a married heterosexual couple to even qualify for surrogacy. In Georgia, that's not the case. If you're a single man who wants to have a child through surrogacy, Georgia is one of the only places where you can do that legally. If you're a same-sex couple, same thing. The law doesn't discriminate based on marital status, sexual orientation, or gender. As long as you can provide genetic material, either sperm or eggs, and you're over the age of 18, you can pursue surrogacy in Georgia. This has made Georgia incredibly popular with the LGBTQ community. In fact, a huge portion of the intended parents going to Georgia right now are same-sex couples who have been shut out of surrogacy options in their home countries. But it's not just about who's allowed to do it. It's about how the process actually works. Let me walk you through what the surrogacy process in Georgia looks like from start to finish. Because understanding the timeline and the steps involved is critical if you're seriously considering this. Step 1. You contact a surrogacy agency in Georgia. There are quite a few agencies operating there, and they handle everything from matching you with a surrogate to coordinating medical care to navigating the legal side. You'll want to do your research here because not all agencies are created equal. Look for agencies with a solid track record, transparent pricing, and good reviews from past clients. Step 2. You provide your medical history and genetic material. If you're using your own sperm or eggs, you'll either travel to Georgia to provide them, or in some cases, you can have them shipped from a fertility clinic in your home country. If you're using donor eggs or donor sperm, the agency can help arrange that as well. Step 3. The agency matches you with a surrogate. In Georgia, surrogates go through a rigorous screening process. They're tested for physical health, mental health, and medical history. They also undergo psychological evaluations to make sure they understand what they're signing up for. Most surrogates in Georgia are women in their 20s or early 30s who have already had at least one healthy pregnancy. This is actually a legal requirement in Georgia. A woman can't become a surrogate unless she's already given birth to a healthy child of her own. Step 4. IVF and embryo creation. Once you're matched with a surrogate, the fertility clinic will create embryos using your sperm and either your eggs or donor eggs. This is done through in vitro fertilization, the same process used in fertility clinics all over the world. The embryos are then tested, graded, and prepared for transfer. Step 5. Embryo transfer. Once the surrogate is medically ready, the embryo is transferred into her uterus. This is a simple outpatient procedure that takes about 10 minutes. After the transfer, the surrogate will take hormones and medications to support the pregnancy. Step 6. Pregnancy. If the embryo implants successfully, the surrogate is now pregnant with your child. She'll go through regular prenatal checkups, ultrasounds, and monitoring throughout the pregnancy. The agency and the clinic will keep you updated on everything. Many intended parents choose to travel to Georgia during key moments like the first ultrasound or the anatomy scan, but it's not required. Step 7. Birth. When the baby is born, you need to be in Georgia. This is non-negotiable. You need to be there to take custody of your child, sign documents, and start the process of getting your baby's birth certificate and passport. Most intended parents arrive a few weeks before the due date just to be safe. Step 8. Bringing your baby home. After the birth, you'll get a Georgian birth certificate with your name on it. Then you'll go to your country's embassy in Georgia to apply for a passport for your baby. Depending on your country, this can take anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. Once you have the passport, you're free to go home. The entire process, from the moment you contact an agency to the moment you bring your baby home, typically takes about 12 to 18 months. Sometimes shorter if everything goes smoothly. Sometimes longer if there are complications like failed embryo transfers or delays in pregnancy. Now let's talk about the things people don't tell you until you're already committed. The hidden challenges, the emotional roller coaster, the unexpected costs. First, travel. Even though the medical and legal process happens in Georgia, you're going to need to travel there multiple times. At minimum, you'll need to be there for the embryo transfer if you're providing fresh genetic material, and you'll definitely need to be there for the birth. Depending on where you live, flights to Georgia can be expensive. If you're coming from the United States, you're looking at long layovers and 15 to 20-hour travel times. If you're coming from Europe, it's easier, but still not cheap. Then there's the time you'll need to spend in Georgia after the birth. You can't just grab your baby and leave the next day. You need to wait for the birth certificate to be issued, then apply for your baby's passport, and then wait for that to be approved. This usually takes about 2 to 4 weeks, so you need to plan to be in Georgia for at least a month after your baby is born. That means accommodation, food, transportation, and all the other costs of living in a foreign country for a month. Second, communication. Not everyone in Georgia speaks English. The doctors and agency coordinators usually do, but if you're trying to navigate daily life or deal with bureaucracy, language can be a barrier. Most agencies provide translation services, but it's still something to be aware of. Third, the emotional toll. Surrogacy is hard. Even when everything goes right, it's emotionally exhausting. You're putting your dreams of having a child in the hands of a stranger in a foreign country. You're not there for most of the pregnancy. You're not there for the doctor's appointments. You're watching from a distance, hoping everything works out. And if something goes wrong, like a failed embryo transfer or a miscarriage, you have to start over. That costs more money, more time, and more emotional energy. Fourth, the ethical questions. Some people have concerns about the ethics of surrogacy, especially international surrogacy. Is the surrogate being fairly compensated? Is she being coerced? Is this just rich people from wealthy countries exploiting women in poorer countries? These are valid questions, and they're worth thinking about. In Georgia, surrogates are paid fairly by local standards. The compensation they receive is often significantly more than what they could earn in a typical job in Georgia. For many surrogates, this is a way to improve their financial situation and provide for their own families. The law also protects surrogates. They have the right to refuse to continue the pregnancy in cases of serious health risk, and they're entitled to full medical care throughout the process. That said, there's always a power imbalance in these situations. The intended parents have more money, more resources, and more options. The surrogate doesn't. So it's important to work with agencies that prioritize the well-being of a surrogate and treat her with respect and dignity. Fifth, the legal risks. Even though Georgia's surrogacy laws are strong, there are still risks. What if your home country refuses to recognize the birth certificate? What if your embassy won't issue a passport? What if the laws in your country change while you're in the middle of the process? These are rare situations, but they do happen. This is why it's absolutely critical to work with an agency that has experience with clients from your specific country. They'll know the potential pitfalls and how to avoid them. All right, so with all of that in mind, let's talk about why 2025 is the year that everyone is moving to Georgia for surrogacy. First, the war in Ukraine. Like I mentioned earlier, Ukraine used to be one of the top surrogacy destinations in the world. But the war has made it almost impossible to pursue surrogacy there. Clinics have shut down. Surrogates have fled the country. Intended parents, who were in the middle of the process, have had to abandon their plans or transfer to other countries. Georgia has absorbed a huge chunk of that demand. Many of the agencies, clinics, and even surrogates that used to operate in Ukraine have relocated to Georgia. Second, increased awareness. More people are learning about Georgia as a surrogacy destination. 5 years ago, most people had never heard of it. Now, it's all over surrogacy forums, Facebook groups, and YouTube channels. The word is spreading, and as more people have successful experiences, more people are willing to take the leap. Third, improvements in infrastructure. Georgia has been investing heavily in its medical infrastructure, especially in the capital city of Tbilisi. New clinics are opening. Existing clinics are upgrading their facilities. The country is actively positioning itself as a hub for medical tourism, and surrogacy is a big part of that. Fourth, political stability. Unlike some other surrogacy destinations, Georgia is politically stable. There's no war, no major civil unrest. The government is pro-Western and actively working to integrate with Europe. For intended parents, that stability is reassuring. You're not worried about your surrogate getting caught in a conflict zone or the government suddenly changing the laws. Fifth, the cost factor is becoming even more important. With inflation driving up the cost of everything, including surrogacy in the United States and other Western countries, the price difference between Georgia and other destinations is more significant than ever. For many families, Georgia isn't just a good option. It's the only option they can afford. So is Georgia the right choice for you? That depends on your situation. If you're looking for an affordable, legal, and straightforward surrogacy process, and you're comfortable with international travel and navigating a foreign system, then Georgia is absolutely worth considering. If you're from a country that recognizes Georgian surrogacy laws, even better. If you're a single parent or a same-sex couple who's been shut out of surrogacy options in your home country, Georgia might be your best bet. But if you're someone who wants to be present for every doctor's appointment, every ultrasound, and every moment of the pregnancy, then international surrogacy might not be for you. If you're not comfortable with the idea of your child being born in a foreign country, or if you have concerns about the ethical implications of international surrogacy, then you'll need to weigh those factors carefully. There's no one-size-fits-all answer here. Surrogacy is deeply personal, and the right choice depends on your values, your budget, your timeline, and your comfort level with uncertainty. But what I can tell you is this: Georgia is not some sketchy back-alley option. It's a legitimate, legal, and increasingly popular destination for surrogacy. Thousands of parents have successfully had children through surrogacy in Georgia, and the number is growing every year. The legal protections are strong. The medical care is solid. The costs are significantly lower than most Western countries. And the process, while not without challenges, is well established and well supported by experienced agencies and clinics. If you're serious about surrogacy and you're exploring your options, Georgia deserves to be on your list. Do your research. Talk to agencies. Connect with other intended parents who've been through the process. Ask questions. Get all the information you need to make an informed decision. Because at the end of the day, this is about bringing a child into your life. That's the most important thing. And whether you do that in Georgia, the United States, or anywhere else, what matters is that you do it in a way that's legal, ethical, and right for you. Georgia is offering a path to parenthood for people who might not have had one otherwise. for single parents, for same-sex couples, for people who can't afford the astronomical costs of surrogacy in their home countries, for people who've been told no everywhere else. And in 2025, more people are saying yes to Georgia than ever before. If you found this helpful, hit subscribe.